we're going to go over a lot of different things, but I wanted to start out with the new installment, I guess, of our cloud security concepts. So, let me pose a theoretical. Killian, if I'm a hacker and I am going into someone's like Amazon bucket, like S2 bucket, and I want to dig around and start doing interesting things like maybe deleting something or accessing information that's been accidentally exposed to me, what do I gotta look out for? Like, do I need to look over my shoulder? Do I need to worry about like potentially somebody uh, having the ability to detect what I'm doing? In this case, it seems as though it really depends, is the answer. Like whether or not someone's running like the free default settings or whether or not they've enabled some more advanced like logging. If
Hmm.
you are a hacker and you want to kind of understand like what kind of details are recorded in the Amazon, or if you're a defender and you want to know what your chances are of figuring out what happened, it's actually kind of important to understand this stuff. So if I share my screen over here, you can see that when we look at all the different services available in Amazon, it's so easy to get lost and confused. Like this
Hmm.
is, I feel like when I opened up Kali Linux for the first time and I saw all these different tools in all these different categories, and I was just like, I don't know what any of these do. And when you open one of these, you realize that you could live in that application like as your job and just never interact with many of these other uh, specific like services that are available here. So I found this to be crazy and definitely a little bit overwhelming at first. But when it comes to logging and when it comes to like catching attackers doing stuff in Amazon resources, there's really two different services that allow you to catch hackers, or at least like determine that maybe something suspicious is going on. So we've got CloudWatch, which okay, it's in the cloud. You're watching the cloud. I get it. You know, you've got your little, magnifying glass, you're taking a peek, and then you've got this alarm bell that rings when the cloud's freaking out. Like, okay, it's kind of like pretty literal, but like I'm getting from the iconography here what CloudWatch is for. And then we have CloudTrail. And this cloud is like, I kind of like that sometimes it makes an unintentional face out of the cloud. Like this cloud's a little shifty, but it's like flying to the right. And this, those are its eyes, that's its mouth. I guess I'm, just kind of seeing shapes in the cloud at this point. But um, the idea with CloudTrail is that it is maybe peeking a little bit more into the audit log of stuff, and whether or not that audit log is actually useful, again, kind of depends. So, Killian, do you know what the difference is between CloudTrail and CloudWatch aside from their iconography?
I've only really had a little bit of experience with CloudTrail, like just like the pure logging stuff. I haven't ever gotten really down into the CloudWatch aspect of it. So this is going to be a good learning experience for me. So I'm curious to see what you've dug up.
Oh well, we're all beginners here. Yeah, I just learned about this stuff last week, so I'm still learning too. But so CloudTrail is kind of the more go-to tool here in order to do security auditing and try to understand like what is going on, like what has happened in my instance, like. And there's two different ways that CloudTrail kind of works. Like so, primarily it's like a governance and like auditing tool, and it's going to be logging the API calls that are made to your resources in AWS. So it's going to be like anybody who's logged in on the console, anybody who's accessing it over like the command line interface,
Hmm.
like all that stuff, including your like automated instances, like a virtual machine that's going to be using the stuff and accessing it. All that's going to be logged in some way, shape, or form. And CloudTrail allows you to audit those logs and go in and like look at them or even set alerts to look for suspicious logs. So if you're a hacker and you're wondering where you're going to get caught, it's going to be one of these two. But CloudTrail specifically is going to be the one that's sniffing down all of those different API calls that are made. And what's interesting about them is there's two different levels of logging. And this is where it gets really interesting. And I think hackers should take notice. Um, if you have set it up by default, there's free logging included. And that's API call history and events for management of AWS services. So that means like you created a bucket, you deleted a bucket,
Hmm.
you modified a bucket, like something like that. On the other end is data events. So that's like a paid service. It is not enabled by default. And this is charged based on the number of events that are processed. Um, And the pricing here is inscrutable to me. Like, all right, I want to pay for CloudTrail. Like, let's see how much this is. Okay, well, I'm assuming you want Lake, or perhaps you want Trails. Well, I'm looking at CloudTrail, so yeah, I want Trails. Or is it Lake? Do I want Lake? Perhaps I want Insight. I don't know. Like, but either way, the pricing here is relatively low until you get into like large applications. Um,
Right.
Data ingestion is one thing you pay for. So like how much data you're feeding it in the first place, and this is by like gigabytes of logs. So for management and data events, it's going to be 75 cents per gigabyte. Wow, that's actually kind of more than I expected. And then 50 cents per gigabyte of like non AWS logs. So if you're like putting like AWS services into this, then that's the price. If you're putting non AWS logs into this, then it's something else. Data retention, that's how long you're holding on to it, like 0.023 cents per gigabyte per month, maximum data retention period of 10 years. And then data. So that's basically like how long is this sticking around for? Like how long could you as a hacker be caught for? Like how long is the evidence going to be
Right.
there? And data queries performed 0.005 per gigabyte of data scan. So this is for setting up like your alerting and whatever else. This pricing recently changed, so like there might be some information out there that's less accurate. Always going to the source of this is the best way to do it, but just be aware that it's not free to turn this on. So, Killian, if I'm a hacker and I go into somebody's AWS instance, like a bucket or something, and I start rifling around and I copy and steal some data, is that going to show up in a log of the free tier that comes by default with CloudTrail?
Without having investigated it off the top of my head, my gut says probably not. My guess is it's probably something basic, maybe about like authentications or connections. I'm going to guess access logging is probably not part of it, but I'd be surprised.
You are 100% correct. So there's logging on CloudTrail for two different types of events: management events that are free and data events that are not free. So a data
Mm,
event is like accessing a resource, downloading a resource, like the kind of
yep.
stuff you actually need to like catch like a malicious insider or a misconfiguration that people are exploiting. So often this is where hackers will be like, okay, like let me go back over here. They'll be like, okay, like or sorry, like a defender will be like, all right, I know that I have an access here that's not supposed to be happening. Um, how do I figure out like what happened? They're like, oh well, thank goodness I have logs, and they open the logs, and it's just like so and so deleted a bucket, and that's the like what happened. What happened before the bucket was deleted? Did they copy stuff? Like was there other events?
Right.
Did were new users created or whatever else like happening like inside of this that maybe weren't administrative actions? It's kind of fuzzy here, and I think that like the likelihood of a hacker getting caught for accessing data on an S2 bucket that has default management logging enabled is low. Like unless they're doing things like creating or deleting buckets, it's not really going to show up in the free version. So that's why this is an
Hmm.
interesting question, because like CloudTrail is specifically set up to catch stuff like this. And if you had data events, then absolutely you could catch somebody doing this. But that's not free. It's going to be, like 10 cents per 10,000 events, or $2 per 1 million Lambda data events. Like the pricing again keeps changing, but it is not free to run this stuff. And thus a lot of businesses will just maybe take the free route and be like, okay, we have logging. That's good enough.
Right.
So getting people to understand the difference between management events and data events, like that to me was the big shocker here. Because if you have CloudWatch up and if you have it configured so that it's running the free version, then like you're going to miss this stuff. And if you then have CloudTrail working and it's doing this, it's ingesting data, then you can still send those logs over to the other service, which is
Right.
CloudWatch, and then you can set up alerts here. Now, CloudWatch is much more for like auditing performance. So it's like monitoring performance, making sure nothing's going crazy. And this is the second way that you as a hacker might get caught. So let's say that you, instead of accessing like a bucket, you access the EC2 service and you start running like a crypto miner on someone's EC2 service, and you're just using up free resources basically at this point, for free for you anyway. So you're making cryptocurrency. This company is now paying for a virtual machine to just mine cryptocurrency. How would you get caught? Well, here is one of the ways you would get caught. If all of a sudden in this like auditing and like performance monitoring dashboard, I see that one of my clusters is just like continuously running and creating a bunch of traffic, and my pricing spikes or my usage spikes in a particular area where it shouldn't, this is where I would be able to set alerts or be able to be notified right away that something's going on. So
Right.
when hackers are like messing around in a cloud environment, like these are the two primary ways that you could be detected. And as a defender, these are the two things you should keep an eye on, because if you're logging data events, then you should have a pretty granular view of, like, for example, like somebody accessing something they shouldn't be internally, or somebody externally beginning to access and scrape resources. I feel like a lot of these data breaches that we talk about where there's an exposed bucket and somebody just scrapes the entire thing and nobody has any idea, like that's a pretty
Right.
good example of an attack that would not be noticed if you're running the default like management or administrative logging, which is free with every account, but not necessarily granular enough to detect an attack like that.
Right.
So that's pretty much it. I just wanted to kind of like throw out there, like for hackers and defenders, where are the logs kept? And last time we talked about different resource-based security policies that are like really important to implement, and one of the big ones was requiring 2FA to delete logs. So if you've got like
Yeah.
a bucket that's storing logs for like CloudTrail or CloudWatch or whatever, and then a hacker gets in, the first thing they're going to do is nuke those logs so that
Yep.
they don't have anything kind of watching what they're doing from that point on. So security policies, we already talked about that. We talked about IAM. We talked about like bucket-based policies or resource-based policies that would enforce things like that. So this then is the next layer of defense. Once you have those security policies in place, then what exactly happens when somebody does get in and starts messing around? Well, the logs would be the first place to check. The alerts that you can set here would be the very first line of defense. So you either know that, oh my God, my like usage is spiking on one of my EC2 instances, and I know that somebody's now crypto mining, or wow, like I'm getting a lot of data access requests like on all of these various resources that should not be exposed publicly, and they're coming from external sources. Like that shouldn't be working. Like
Right.
maybe there's something wrong with my IAM policies or something else that's causing this to happen, or maybe somebody has breached like a friendly account and is using it to scrape internally. Like that's the kind of thing that would be caught with actually doing access level management for CloudTrail.